One of the biggest rock bands of today still gets nervous. Not before a show, but before a DJ set. Hello beautiful people and welcome back to Are We On Air? This week I sat down with the Black Keys at our Kioskothek on Sunset Boulevard to talk everything from their earliest musical obsessions to the obscure soul records that they spin at the legendary record hangs. For those of you who don't know, this is the iconic rock duo who's won 6 Grammys, headlined Coachella and sold out Madison Square Garden in just 15 minutes. We go deep into their new album No Rain, No Flowers, collaborations with Scott Storch, and the music that shaped them, from Captain Beefheart to Johnny Thunder. There's also a story involving train-wreck weed that you don't want to miss. And don't blink when Pat confesses the song that still makes his hands shake. And if you haven't already, then do hit subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and of course at areweonair.com. I know many people say it, but it does make a difference. Much love, and I'll speak to you soon. The Black Keys, live and direct on Sunset Boulevard at our Kioskothek. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have you here. And we're basically here to explore what the soundtrack to your lives is and are and was. And why don't we start with what's your earliest significant musical memory that shaped you as an artist?
It would probably be my mom playing piano and maybe my dad's records, playing the Beatles. Be earliest musical memories, definitely.
What record or what track shall we play from?
Well, my mom always played Scott Joplin, The Entertainer. She's kind of been working on that one song her entire life.
My earliest musical memory, I mean, my mom used to play the radio, my dad played the radio, but I think the first song that I was like, remember being obsessed with was Eddie Grant, Electric Avenue. Ooh. Yeah, and I still love it.
We're gonna rock down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. Oh,
you know, there's an Electric Avenue in Venice, and I walked by the other day, and I was saying to my friend, "Is that the street that Eddie Grant was singing about?"
No, it's in Brixton, but you know, it's like the music video. I remember seeing that, and like there's the sound, which sounds like a motorcycle, but it's the Moog, you know what I mean? And I think I've always just kind of been obsessed with the sound of like that type of Moog synthesizer, just
because
growl.
of that first record.
I think so.
Wow, that's cool.
We love him.
What was the band he was in?
The Equals.
The Equals.
Yeah, we play an Equals song at our record hangs.
Yeah.
Let's talk about these record hangs because I keep hearing great things. Maybe I'll swing by tonight. Big record collector here myself. Tell me, where did this come from? What do you usually play, or what have you been playing, or is it completely let's see what happens?
Well, it started because we were, on tour, it can get very boring, especially Dan doesn't like to go to bars really, so there's nothing to do. So he started bringing his 45s, and we would, figure out bars where he could spin records at. And then he asked me if I wanted to bring some, and he would start asking friends to join. So it became a thing. So, we started, we went to London on a trip while Dan was doing some promo for this record that he did for our buddy of ours, Leon Michaels. And I tagged along, and we did a couple of DJ nights. We call them record hangs. But yeah, I mean, I think it's basically like, it re-sparked my interest in collecting records, and it's become this kind of like friendly competition to see who can get like the coolest, best, hardest to find record. And it's also really funny because we'll like drop a couple $100 on a record and then be so stoked, and you play it and it just, no one gets it. So it's kind of about like, it's more about what you can get the crowd moving to.
Yeah. It's the ultimate test. It's been so informative. The more we get into it, it definitely it has helped shape the last few albums we've made, because like we've been heavily into collecting the records and spinning them and seeing how crowds react to different records and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's definitely like
Testing the waters, basically.
become something more than just, you know, what it is in a way.
And there's like some kind of rules too. Like we don't play like cheat code music. You know what I mean? Like
I like that.
like there's no, you don't play any rap or disco.
We're allowed to do like 1 or 2 a night.
At the end of the night, you can, because once you go rap, you can't go back. It's just too good. So it's like we kind of stick in this zone, like early 60s to mid 70s. It is true. Like you just play.
No, what the goal is try to like get records that you
Feel familiar, but you don't know
swear
what
it's a hit, but you've never heard it before.
Yeah.
You know, and
That's the
sort of
ultimate,
like
right? That's
what
the
we're searching for.
Yeah.
delight.
Yeah, not just like one little cool bar or whatever sample. We were trying to find like
It's got to stand up, the whole record.
the whole record. Yeah.
Did you, which record, like, because I'm super curious, what records have you like kind of found through digging? It was like, okay, let's try this tonight. And it actually resonated, and which one did actually bomb?
Well, the cool thing about this is, you know, we invite friends or other record collectors to do it with us. So the coolest thing I think for us is like people want to show off their cool shit to us. So every time we do one, we end up getting a couple records like that we'd never heard before. Hopefully if it goes well. But I mean, you know,
and vice versa, and that's what's fun about it, man. It's like, yeah, and we every time we do these record hangs, we have a different guest, and it's just fun, the whole community that you build, and you know, all the dealers that we've known for years and stuff like that. It's fun interacting with all those people all the time.
It's just, yeah, as cheesy as it sounds, it's just like a celebration of music. But you know, I think that the quintessential record hang, where it all starts is we were on tour, you know, 2005, and in a van, and we were doing the Southeast tour, which was like a really fun, like maybe our first fun U.S. tour, because we had like, I don't know, I'm not sure why, but I remember we went to Shangri-La Records, and it was like beautiful spring day, and Dan picked up this compilation that was made by the guys that worked there called
Chains and Black Exhaust.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of rare Memphis rock and psychedelic funk, and the whole thing's great. But there's a first song on there is a song by a group called Black Rock called Yeah, and that's maybe like the main record hang song.
Yeah, that's the record hang theme song.
Love that. All right, gonna check it out. I don't know if you saw or heard James Murphy and Too Many DJs have the thing called Despacio, right? Where they hide, you don't see them. They hide behind the amps, basically. It's purely about the music, not seeing a DJ A, but also nothing above 105 BPM. That's the rule, right? Do you have like a rule specific besides no disco and stuff, or it's just like all genre goes? Besides the hip hop at the end.
We feel the room out, you know what I mean? But we do play a lot of stuff that's a little bit more down tempo, like, but nothing usually too, not much stuff below 90.
We like to like gradually build things up, build the energy up, and then pull the rug out from under people. We're playing garage, we're playing soul records, we're playing like Jamaican records and cumbia, and mix it all up, and like, you know, kind of anything goes really.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we'll get into a zone where we're just like, one of us plays a garage rock song, and then it just goes into garage rock territory for a while, and then, you know, if you feel the momentum, just switch it up. Yeah. Just having fun, you know. I mean, because we can only bring so many records, you know. How many fit in those bags?
150.
Oh, really? I guess we're kind of loaded. We're kind of stacked, I guess. We got like 300 records. We can go for a while.
I know that. It's like, and also, what's the beauty of having records? There's no song requests. Okay, this is it. Go help yourself.
Well, that's like, speaking of that, that is kind of the hardest part about this is like doing it, and you know you want to like do something cool, but it can get really fan heavy. Like if you do it around a show, and that's usually when the worst ones happen, and we try to avoid it because
they want your songs.
You end up with like
the rock and roll fans. They just end up standing there.
We call them foamers because it's kind of really good song, like just like zoning out, and then somebody will
just standing right in the middle in the dance floor.
Yeah,
just ruining the party, not realizing it at all.
Yeah,
but
just waiting to headbang.
Just
no, they mean well. It's just they just, you know, and sometimes we'll physically move them. I've walked out in front and said, come over here. Stand over here.
Yeah, it's like I have like one buddy in particular where he just can't take a social cue that he needs to fuck off.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually have to tell him, it's time for you to fucking leave.
The last one we did, there was like 3 dudes right in front of us, just right in the middle of the dance floor, just ruining it. You know what I mean? But we moved. Remember that big guy that we moved over?
Yeah.
He was there for like 2.5 hours jamming out by himself.
It was great. We just had to get him in the right spot.
Yeah, he needed to find his position.
What's the most prized record that you discovered, like a holy grail for yourself that you're like, whoa,
Like
that you might not even take on tour because it's so precious? Or maybe you do.
no, we take him on tour. It freaks us out. I mean, that's why we
There's a safe
usually
on the
have
tour
him
bus.
chained to us.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've got a couple records that, like, according to Discogs, you know, maybe only like 10 people have, and I just happened to like
Have one.
find it on Discogs coming up right then, and you know. But I think it's not really about the value of the record. It's about like something that just is a ripper, and and you never heard it, you know. And you know, Dan's. I'm hearing something from him, a new thing or two every night, and we've been doing it. We've done maybe 30 of them this past year, so. It's
alumni.
It's hard to find one. Like it really is hard to find one. I mean, I'll buy a stack of records. Like I think I get for every 25 records I buy, one of them makes the bag. Well, when we first started, I just was pulling from kind of garbage from what I had, and I was like embarrassed. And I was like, gotta go.
So which record or which track shall we add to the playlist?
I think one is this one song is another quintessential record hang is Johnny Thunder, I'm Alive, which was shown to us.
That's definitely a prime example of a song that was just like instantly sounds like a huge hit, something that you've heard a million times, but we just got introduced to it.
It
2 years
feels
ago.
familiar, like it's a visceral experience where you don't know.
The record hits so hard.
It's like one of the best rock songs you've ever heard, and our friend Kelly Finnegan showed it to us, and I was like, how the fuck? I mean, that's what this is. It's like, how the fuck do we not hear this? You know what I mean? And I looked up the song, like Bob Dylan, even like when it came out in 1968, like Bob Dylan was like saying it was like one of the greatest rock songs ever recorded. So even with the endorsement from him then, it just still wasn't played on the radio because the music industry's fucking slimy.
Sick. Love it. Well, I know it's very difficult, but how would you describe yourself in 3 songs?
Jizza Liquid Swords.
When the MCs came to live out their names and to perform, some had to snort cocaine to act insane with the 4 heat rocking on down on.
You know, I mean, also because it's got the Memphis sample, Willie Mitchell sample. You know, we were kind of the other day we were talking about Memphis hip hop, and we realized that all how much we love Memphis rap, and we're like, oh, but all the New York stuff we like, it's just sampling Memphis funk and soul. So Memphis is kind of the epicenter to the music that we like, I think.
Something off Safe as Milk, you know, Captain Beefheart, something off Safe as Milk.
Yeah. Anything off it.
Yeah.
But I mean,
that was one of those early records that we really bonded over, where Pat was coming from a indie rock kind of world, and I was coming from listening to roots music and blues stuff, and we came together, you know, and there was just a couple records that overlapped, and that was one of them that we really dug.
Yeah, that's like a weird kind of record because you can come at it like, you know, my uncle was a musician that shared a lot of music with me when I was a teenager, so I was like, you know, aware of the Shags and Can and stuff like that when I was a teenager, and so I was into kind of somewhat weirder stuff, I guess. But when I heard like Safe as Milk, I was like, there's some, you know, it was the familiar aspect of like the blues aspect. They got me kind of more into blues. So, and then I think for Dan, it's like the opposite way. Like he was aware of, you know, all the blues stuff, Howlin' Wolf, and then got into Can and all kinds of shit. So it's an important record. And Ry Cooder's guitar playing on it, the drumming on it, everything about it.
I never heard it put quite that way. The shape I'm in is born away. They call the day.
The third important song. There's a lot. I mean, there's so much music, but I think some of that mid-period Kinks stuff, I think that's like that type of song is something that we've always been into, like something off of Arthur or something else by the Kinks.
Yeah.
So you got like this classic song and then you can put weird shit around it and a beat under it. And that's hopefully what the Black Keys is.
I love it. No rain, no flowers. Tell me, what's the story behind that? And your favorite track on the new upcoming album?
Well, No Rain, No Flowers was a song that we wrote actually with a songwriter named Rick Knowles, a guy from LA who I'd heard about through working with Lana. She wrote a bunch of songs, a bunch of her first albums with Rick. And I always loved the melancholy pop songs, how his chords sounded. And so we reached out to him and he was like, well, I'm going to be in Nashville next week. And he'd never been there. So we took it as like a sign and we set it up a few days. And that was one of the first things we wrote with him. Yeah. And that was after we had just had a, kind of a shitty year, had to cancel a tour. And, we were feeling pretty down. And so we went into the studio and tried to, snap out of it. And this is kind of the result was this song.
And I think the song's also like, it's a good example of something informed by the record hangs. You know what I mean? It was like, because the song, Rick likes to start with a title. So the song started with this title that Dan had. And he just had Dan kind of like, he was like, how would you sing that? Just with no chords, no beat. And Dan just, came up
Which
with
was insane. Not anything we'd ever done before, so.
Well, this is the thing, is like making music in a collaborative way. It's like the same as when you DJ and have a friend there. You're gleaning like something, how these people who are masters of what they do, how they work. And so it's so much fun. So, but for us, the fun is to get someone that's like a master of what they do and then contextualize it. Like we're producers and make it sound like the Black Keys. In this case, I think, we were aware of I think want to make a dancier song, so it was like, how do we do that in a Black Keys way? And so it was like, we were like talking about, 4 on the floor kind of simple dance beat. And then we're like trying to like get into like some early proto disco, like Giorgio Moroder synth bass line.
It ended up being synth bass and 4 on the floor drums, which we've never really done before.
Yeah.
So
going back to the move, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, back to the mode.
You also work with Scott Storch.
Storch,
right?
yes. Yeah, Scott
Storch. Legend, icon. What was that like to work with him? And talking about doing a collaborative piece and also like back-to-back DJ sets, same thing. It's like the ping pong of creative ideas and energies, right? And something might come out of it. So seeing that live in the studio and just throwing ideas into the room and see what comes out of it, what's it like to experience it firsthand?
I mean, that's what we get addicted to. That's why we do this, is because we fell in love with that very early on. And anything can happen every day you get in the studio. You never know. You know what I mean? So, but we've been fanboys of Scott Storch forever. Ever since high school, we've known about Scott Storch, and like
going back to that hip hop track at the end, yeah.
Yeah, and he, just seeing videos of him playing keyboards and playing all his hits and shit, and he's just a fucking crazy personality. We didn't know if he would say he doesn't really do that kind of thing. But we reached out and we convinced him to come to Nashville, and it was fun as hell. I mean, and he loved it too, because he got into the studio and it was all these acoustic keyboards and analog keyboards, and he's not used to that. He's only in the box, really, in this control room working on hip hop stuff. So he was like a kid in a candy shop, basically, and it was fun. It was just fun as hell.
So as an artist, talking about Nashville, changing your environment, does it have an effect on your creativity?
I think so, for sure. I mean, when we made Ohio Players, we were coming out here a lot, and it was super fun to be working in LA, especially like wintertime, getting to come out here. It's nice. When we made our record Brothers, we went to Muscle Shoals, Alabama to cut that. And we recorded at Muscle Shoals Sound Studio, which Now it's been rehabbed and like apparently in pretty good shape. But when we went there, it was a shithole. It was real fucked up, and like the whole city, there was like nothing going on. There was like one shop.
That's why you like staying here a lot, right? It's original, the patina.
Well, yeah, exactly. But no, I think it was cool because there's nothing to do in Muscle Shoals except work, and someone kept bringing this really shitty weed to us, and I don't really smoke weed, but I smoked that weed, and I liked it so much, and I was like, man, this is really great music, sounded so good. And then I remember we called our day-to-day manager at the time, and we're like, can you bring us some more weed? And he's like, yeah, man, he brought this shit from New York called Trainwreck. I smoked like one hit. I was like, I'm never smoking weed again. And I'm like, what's wrong with you, bro? How are you fucking smoking it?
Trainwreck kind of said it all. Let's try it.
Oh my God.
Anything you picked up in Nashville while being there that, like a track, that's like, oh, this is it.
I mean, honest, just the whole collaborative spirit. I mean, that's what Nashville is based on. Musicians getting together, working together in the studio. That was not something that we were used
intended
to.
Or planned.
That was not something that we were accustomed to. We coming from Akron, where it was like we were a two-piece out of like necessity. We wanted more musicians. We couldn't find any musicians. We tried, and there's just not any collaboration really going on. But when you get to Nashville, it's just different. So it's really changed everything in a good way, I think, positive way.
So when you don't have the, let's say, resources, or as in this case, we needed more musicians, but it's just the two of us, to have like let's call it limited access. Does that force you to be more creative with what you have?
I think early on we didn't have access to a studio. We didn't have access to like other musicians, so it forced us to learn how to make music, record music, make music on our own, which was great. But at the same time, I feel like the biggest lesson we learned, because eventually you get this insular world kind of built around you. The biggest thing we learned was like when we got like, I guess, secure enough with where we were to know that we needed to ask for some help if we wanted to get better, So like that's when we worked with Danger Mouse, and that's when we worked with Real Engineer, and that's when we
made money.
Chat, and then we were like, this record could sound better. Like it's good. It's called Chad Blake to mix it. It's like this, and then we're like, whoa. When we're like, we have access to all of these fucking people if we want them. All. It's like, what was wrong with us? I was like, oh, we didn't have any fucking money. Our whole dude, our first record, our budget was that we got $0 for our record label. The next record, we got $12,000 to make the whole album. So, and after we divided it up and paid taxes, like it just paid our rent for a few months. And so it was like we were just recording on it as cheap as possible. But I think that's a thing that a lot of if I see like something that's like written, directed, produced, whatever, blah, blah, by one person, I'm like, that's cool that they wanted to do it all on their own, but it's definitely not as good as it could have been.
I love it. So there's this new term that's been floating around, and I'm curious if it kind of affects you guys, because you're kind of like not really part of it, but kind of more on the outskirts of this like indie sleaze movement. Has it had an effect? Did it bring a new audience to shows through that, or is like not really?
We're indie scuzz, you know what I mean? We're below sleaze. We were never cool enough to be fucking hanging out with the yeah and all that shit. I mean, eventually we were, but like it's like if you weren't like in the club back in the day, you're kind of like get fucked. Although that said, we're friends with a lot of these people still. But no, I think that we were floating below the radar there. And definitely didn't feel like any sort of kinship to any of those bands.
No, it definitely felt like baloney.
We felt like
in the big city.
Yeah.
Did you want to be part of it, or you're like, nah?
Well, how were we? We were living in Akron. We weren't like floating around some lofts in Brooklyn. We didn't have money. We didn't have parents with money. We didn't go to colleges. We were just, and I'm not bitter about it, but that's just the reality. Yeah. And when we would go to New York City, we couldn't afford to stay at a hotel. We couldn't even afford a beer. We used to go to the Lakeside Lounge and like maybe get a beer or two, but we'd stay at the Howard Johnson's on Houston and get the fuck out of there because we had no money. We'd spend all of our money and split like a pastrami sandwich at Katz's. And I'd be like, that's all our food for 2 days. No, but I think it's cool, looking back on that stuff. And I love a lot of those records. Like this,
the process.
That First Strokes record was a huge influence on me. Like,
what track should we play? Add to the playlist. Of that period. Doesn't have to be the Strokes, can be.
I mean, I think the Strokes would do. I think hard to explain or some. I mean, hard to explain.
All right. From all the gigs that you've played since then, was there one that really stuck with you that you will cherish forever, and why?
The ones that are seared into my mind are like ones that were almost traumatic. Like
One of the very first ones at the Beachland Tavern.
Yeah, there's some early ones.
The first time we played in the Cleveland at the Beachland Tavern was definitely memorable. We had like 30 minutes set, and we played it in like 15 minutes. We just played everything so fast because we were so nervous, and we both kind of blacked out on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You still get nervous today when you go on stage, or it's kind of a routine?
We get nervous when we spin records. I almost said DJ.
Yeah.
When we spin records.
Music curator, selector.
I don't like to think of it as nervousness. But I get excited. You know,
Yeah.
It's like if you're. It's the same feeling about if you're like about to go on like a date. Yeah, it's like.
Aw.
Yeah. No, it is. It's
I didn't know you felt that way.
Yeah, I get like.
Every time he looks deep into your eyes before the gig.
But it's good. But you know, it's got to like channel that when you're on stage. That's the trick. It's like channel it back into your instrument and just try to like have fun. But I mean, as I say, the gig, I think it's like headlining Lollapalooza and Coachella. That year we were just kind of these festivals that we started like at the bottom and you know within
Worked your way up there.
yeah, and then we're headlining the thing and it's like the mayor of Chicago is like using us to like help himself by introducing us and like, but at least I did learn that he cut his finger off at Arby's, which I kind of helped take the edge off. But no, you know, I thought that was cool.
What's your go-to falling in love or heartbreak song?
You know, I think there's some really sweet songs on like some of those late '90s Yola Tango records, but that's my flavor a little bit. Some, you know, I grew up listening to a lot of indie rock stuff, but you know, I think sometimes like
That Sex and Candy song? Is that the
no, that's the one I masturbate
Is that what
to.
you're talking about?
That's the song I jack it to. I beat the
That's
meat.
my next question.
I beat the meat to anything
In
by
Power
Marcy's
Stance. In Power Stance.
Power Stance. Marcy's Playground. Power Stance. Ball gag in.
What was the question?
Go-to falling in love or heartbreak song?
I think one of the greatest heartbreak songs was actually written by my neighbor in Nashville. I live next door to this guy Bob Gaudio, who was in the Four Seasons and wrote a bunch of songs. And he wrote this song called "The Sun Ain't Gonna Shine Anymore," sung by the Walker Brothers. And I think that might be one of the greater ones.
The sun ain't gonna shine anymore. The moon ain't gonna rise over the sky.
Well, talking about masturbation, what's the sexiest song?
Said there's a soul group, Black Velvet. Is It Me You Really Love? You know, that's like the old lowrider kind of soul jam. That's a sexy song.
Is it me you really want? Is it my body?
Sweet. Well, to wrap up our little chat, if your life would be a movie, what song would play in the end credits? In maybe the Black Keys documentary, who knows?
Don't know.
Benny Hill theme song.
Benny Hill theme song. It's got to be The Entertainer, Scott Joplin.
My mom just working on it.
Yeah, just that. The rehearsal tapes from 1984 by Mary Arbog.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on air with us. It was a delight and a joy.
Yeah,
Thank you,
guys.
guys. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in this week. If you want to listen to the full playlist, visit areonair.com or our Spotify channel. You can also find us on Instagram and on YouTube at Arionair. And a big thank you to my wonderful team at Studio Neu. I'm Armand Nafei, and I'll speak to you soon.